In the pristine hallways of Dallarot Industries, where the sound of expensive heels echoed across marble floors, there was a name that made even the most powerful executives hold their breath: Clara Dallarot. Only daughter of billionaire Robert Dallarot, heiress to an empire that manufactured technology for the entire world. But inside the company, she was known for something completely different. She was every employee's nightmare. No one could handle her. No teacher, nanny, or assistant lasted more than a week by her side. The 10-year-old girl, wearing the most expensive school uniform in the city and bearing the cold gaze of someone who'd never heard the word no, had transformed Dallarot Industries into her personal playground. But that day, someone new would walk through the company doors. Someone who wasn't there to obey, but to teach. And he didn't wear a suit. He brought only a steel bucket, a mop, and a past no one knew. His name was Anthony Reyes, and he was about to do the impossible. It was Monday morning. Rain fell against the tall windows of Dallarot Tower, reflecting the glow of a city that never slept. Clara arrived accompanied by 2 security guards, dragging her pink leather backpack. An intern rushed to press the elevator button, trembling. "You're slow," she said without looking at him. "My father pays you to move, not to breathe." The intern just swallowed hard. On the executive floor, Robert Dallarot discussed numbers with shareholders. His deep, calculating voice spoke of growth, profits, and investments. But when one of the directors mentioned his daughter's presence in the hallways, the billionaire simply responded, "Leave Clara alone, she's just a child." Except she wasn't. Not really. At that very moment, Clara deliberately knocked over coffee on a conference table. She laughed loudly as the papers got soaked. And when an employee tried to reprimand her, Clara grabbed the woman's badge and threw it on the floor. "You work for me, not the other way around." The silence that followed was uncomfortable. The girl turned her back with the air of a bored princess and walked out through the corridors, her footsteps echoing between the glass walls. What no one noticed was that behind the arrogance, there was loneliness. A child who traded love for attention, and who, even surrounded by everything, had no one. But fate was already preparing the arrival of someone who would see beyond the gold and the scandal. A man who, with the simple sound of a cloth being wrung, would change everything that girl believed about the value of people. His name would echo in her heart for her entire life. That afternoon, when the elevator opened and the janitor entered with the steel bucket in his hands, Clara Dallarot's world began to change. If you feel these stories can make a difference, please join us by subscribing and sharing so we can keep spreading this positive impact. The elevator doors opened with a breath of air conditioning. From inside, a man with slow steps balanced a steel bucket, a mop, and a cleaning cart, where everything seemed meticulously organized. He had gray hair combed back, steady hands, and a calm gaze that didn't ask for permission, just respect. His badge read, "Anthony Reyes, Facilities." While executives rushed past, no one really saw him, but Clara did. From the end of the hallway, the girl observed this new element in her kingdom with the impatient curiosity of someone who decides in a second whether someone is worthy or not. She crossed her arms, tilted her head, and smiled with one corner of her mouth, a testing smile. Anthony parked the cart next to the main hall. Unhurried, he wet the cloth, wrung it with the precision of someone who'd repeated the gesture for decades, and began cleaning a trail of dried coffee someone had spilled hours before. Each movement had a calm rhythm, a kind of silent music, invisible to those who live in a hurry. Clara approached with heavy steps, the sound of her expensive shoes echoing across the marble. "You," she said, pointing. "If you spill that again, my father will fire you." Anthony raised his eyes. There was no challenge in them, nor fear. There was presence. "Spill what, miss?" he asked in a low voice, his pronunciation slightly accented, like someone who'd collected cities in his memory. "Your silence," she responded, provoking. "Only people who make noise get to stay here." He smiled slightly. "Noise helps sell ideas. Silence helps hear them." Clara frowned, confused for a second, and irritated the next instant for having felt something. On Anthony's cart, beside labeled bottles, there was something out of place, an old notebook with a brown cover worn at the edges, held by a rubber band. Small, discreet, almost a secret. Clara noticed, and curiosity ignited like a short fuse. "What's in there?" She pointed at the notebook. "Work, memories, and some things that don't belong in the trash," he replied, returning to his cloth. "Like dreams?" she provoked with irony. "Like truths." The girl rolled her eyes. "Truths don't pay for private elevators. Truths don't buy attention." Upstairs, the conference room door opened with a snap. Robert Dallarot appeared flanked by directors. He saw his daughter next to the janitor. For an instant, their gazes met. The tycoons, calculating, measuring risks. The janitors, serene, measuring people. Robert looked away first. "Continue, gentlemen," he said curtly, and disappeared down the hallway. Clara noticed, and that hurt in a place she couldn't name. Anthony, without commenting, crouched down and discreetly picked up something from under the hall bench, a small stuffed bear, one arm sewn crookedly, forgotten, dusty. He blew on it, cleaned it with the cloth, and adjusted the loose stitching by tightening the thread with his strong fingers. Someone lost their courage. Happens to the best of us. Clara swallowed hard. That bear looked like hers from when she was younger. Or was it just similar? A memory floating in the dark. "You fix broken things?" she asked, trying to sound indifferent. "Sometimes. Sometimes we just listen until the thing fixes itself." He extended the bear. Clara hesitated. Accepting would be conceding a micro-victory to the stranger, so she shrugged and took the toy as if she didn't care. "It looks terrible," she said, but she pressed the bear against her chest for a second longer than she should have. Anthony moved away, pushing the cart, sweeping his gaze across the floor and inadvertently something above it. On the mezzanine, Marina Collins, Robert's executive assistant, observed the scene with a rare gleam in her eyes. The gleam of someone who recognizes kindness. "Who is that?" an intern whispered. "Someone who knows how to clean what we don't see getting dirty," she replied. Clara, still near the cart, noticed that the rubber band was slightly loose. A corner of yellowed paper escaped, with a name written in pencil. Helena. The girl's heart stumbled. Helena. Like Mom. The word didn't reach her lips, but it ignited the memory. The photo in the hallway, the old perfume. "Why that name?" she asked firmly, disguising the tremor. Anthony did not respond. He just pushed the rubber band back, covering the word, and moved on to the next stain on the floor. Clara felt pride throbbing. No one ignored Clara DeLauro. No one. She looked from side to side. The security guards distracted at the turnstile. The elevator with brushed doors opening and closing like a silver mouth. Clara walked lightly as if about to whistle. She rested her hand on the cart. "Your bucket makes a lot of noise," she provoked. "Must be hard for your head to think with truth." Anthony smiled sideways, without raising his face. "Sometimes it's the noise that scares away the fear." That was enough. While he turned to reach for the mop, Clara slipped the notebook into her own backpack, a quick movement like stealing candy from the pantry. The rubber band scratched the metal lightly, a minimal sound swallowed by the hum of the air conditioning. Anthony stopped for a second. He didn't look back, he didn't say anything, he just breathed, and resumed the cloth. Clara felt a strange chill on her neck. Guilt? Curiosity? Revenge? And tightened her fingers on the backpack strap. If that notebook had her mother's name, she needed to know why, because no one talked about Helena, because every time she asked, her father answered with numbers, and numbers don't hug. The imaginary camera pulled back through the glass corridor, the janitor returning to work, small against the tower's immensity, the girl disappearing into the elevator with a freshly stolen secret, the city reflected in the steel panels, indifferent, for now. Inside Clara's backpack, the notebook breathed a story no one had the courage to tell. And at the top of the cover, hidden under the rubber band, a name almost whispered back. Helena. The elevator rose in silence. Clara held the backpack against her chest as if hiding a forbidden treasure. The sound of floors passing, bing, ding, ding, seemed to count the seconds until discovery. Inside the backpack, the brown-covered notebook, the worn rubber band, the name Helena. It was the same name engraved on the small golden plaque in the lobby, Helena DeLauro Memorial Hall. The mother she barely remembered, but whose absence filled everything. In her father's empty office, Clara sat before his desk and opened the notebook. The pages were full of drawings, building sketches, electrical safety notes, and in the upper corner, old dates. And there, among scribbles, a pencil portrait of a smiling woman. She recognized the face. "Mom," she whispered. On the next page, phrases in English mixed with technical notes, but one stood out, underlined 3 times. "She trusted me when no one else did. H.D." Clara didn't understand everything, but she felt the impact. It seemed like a memory, a friendship between her mother and the janitor. How? Why? Before she could continue, the door opened. Robert DeLauro entered. The silence between father and daughter was brief, tense, full of things that had never been said. "What are you doing here, Clara?" "Looking for someone to tell me the truth," she answered without fear. Robert saw the notebook on the desk. His face hardened. "Where did you get that?" "From the new janitor," she replied defiantly. "Why is Mom's name in it?" Robert snatched the notebook from her hands and flipped through the pages quickly. Seeing the notes, he paled. "That man shouldn't be here." Clara tried to grab the notebook back, but he closed it. "Go home, now." His voice was firm, but trembling at the edges. Clara left crying, and her father pressed the phone button. "Security, I want Mr. Reyes in my office, immediately." When Anthony entered, the billionaire saw something he didn't expect. The gaze of a man without anger, only with pain. "You're violating my family's privacy," Robert said. Anthony responded calmly. "No, sir. I'm just trying to honor it." Robert fell silent. "Who?" he asked. "Your wife." Anthony looked at the notebook in his hand. "Helena DeLauro." That was the first crack in Robert DeLauro's ice, and at that instant, without anyone noticing, the past began to breathe again. That night, the secrets from 10 years ago began to stir, and Helena DeLauro's name would echo again through the tower's corridors.
In the following days, Anthony continued his work as if nothing had happened. But the looks changed. Security followed him discreetly. Employees whispered when he passed. The janitor had become a topic on the glass floors of DeLauro Industries. Clara watched from afar. Even after almost being fired, Anthony showed no anger. He just cleaned, tended to the lobby plants, and greeted everyone with a calm, "Good morning." She didn't understand how someone could be so serene in a place where everyone rushed. One day, she saw him watering a fern everyone thought was dead. "You're wasting your time," she said. "Maybe, but everything that receives care responds. Sometimes it takes time, but it responds." The phrase stuck in her mind. Anthony began teaching Clara without actually teaching. He let her observe him, participate. He showed how everything had value, even small things. "Does the glass look clean?" he'd ask. "Yes," she'd answer. "Then look at it with the light behind it. There's always what the common eye doesn't see." It was a lesson about windows, but also about people. Marina Collins, the billionaire's assistant, noticed the change in the girl. Clara spoke less and listened more. She even began bringing an extra sandwich to leave on Anthony's cart without saying anything. One evening, Clara waited for her father to leave and went down to the ground floor. "You knew my mother, didn't you?" she asked. Anthony stopped, still holding the floorcloth. "I did," he replied. "How?" "She believed in me when no one else did." Clara fell silent, looking at him. "Believed in what?" she asked quietly. Anthony looked at the floor. "That I wasn't to blame for what happened." She frowned. "Blame for what?" "The fire." His voice came out almost in a whisper. "The one that took her life." The silence between them was cutting. The girl looked at him in shock, trying to understand what that meant. "But Dad said it was an accident," she insisted. Anthony took a deep breath. "Not all dirt is visible, miss. Some takes time to clean." He slowly walked away, pushing the cart, and left Clara alone in the hallway. The sound of the bucket tapping lightly on the floor was the last thing she heard before standing still, trying to piece together what her father had never shown her. And that same night, one floor up, someone reopened an old file on DeLauro Industries servers, a forgotten report, an accident, a name, and a lie that cost a life. The next morning, Clara looked for Marina Collins. The woman was alone in the conference room, typing reports. Clara entered without knocking and closed the door behind her. "You know what happened to my mother, don't you?" she asked with firm eyes. Marina hesitated, looked around, and after a few seconds responded in a low voice. "What did your father tell you?" "That it was an accident," Clara said. "Then he told you half the truth." Marina sighed and sat down. The cold glow of the lights reflected in the tears held in her eyes. 10 years ago, there was an electrical short circuit in the building. It started in the research lab, the same one your mother worked in. Anthony Reyes was the chief engineer responsible for that sector. When the fire started, he tried to save everyone, but the system failed. And somehow, he ended up accused of negligence. "Accused by whom?" Clara asked. "By the board and the lawyers. Your father believed them." The girl swallowed hard. He lost everything? His job, his reputation, his family. But he never left the city. And now, after so long, he came back. Maybe because there was still something he needed to clean. Clara was silent for a moment. Then she left without saying anything. At the end of the day, she went down to the storage room and waited. Anthony appeared with the bucket in his hands. "I found a letter," she said, lying. "From my mother." Anthony stopped. "And what did it say?" "That you weren't to blame." His eyes filled with tears. He brought his hand to his face and took a deep breath. "So she managed to write it." Anthony told everything. The fire started because of an electrical failure that an employee had hidden. The man was protected by one of the company's most influential executives, a personal friend of Robert DeLauro's. Helena discovered the truth and tried to defend him, but she died before revealing the real culprit's name. Anthony was silenced to protect the company's image. "Why didn't you tell my father?" Clara asked, confused and hurt. "Because he would have never listened to me, and because the man who covered it all up was his best friend." Clara felt the ground disappear. The storage room lights seemed colder, the air heavier. Before she could say anything, the fire alarm sounded. Sirens echoed through the corridors. Employees began running. The sound of automatic doors slamming and voices shouting Clara's name mixed with the chaos. "What is happening?" she asked, frightened. A security guard appeared at the door. "Fire on the 10th floor. The system is stuck." Anthony dropped everything and ran. The memory of the past hit him like a blaze. He climbed the stairs 2 at a time, his old body propelled by something stronger than fear. And in the smoke that was already beginning to spread, history seemed to repeat itself. But this time, there was someone willing to face the fire.
The sound of sirens echoed through every floor. Red lights flashed on the glass walls, reflecting the panic of people trying to evacuate the tower. The smell of smoke invaded the corridors and mixed with the distant hum of alarms. Clara was trapped in the elevator, between the 10th and 11th floors. The power had fluctuated and the system locked. She pounded on the steel doors, screaming for help. "Someone, please!" On the ground floor, Anthony dropped the cleaning cart and began climbing the stairs. His heavy steps echoed on the concrete as the smoke became denser. The firefighters hadn't arrived yet, and no one knew a child was trapped up there. Anthony climbed breathlessly but determined. Each flight of stairs brought back memories of the fire from 10 years ago. The heat, the panic, Helena's scream. He relived every second as he ran. Not again, not this time. When he reached the blocked floor, smoke already hid half the corridor. He saw the elevator panel flashing red. He pulled the emergency key attached to his belt and forced the door. "Miss Clara!" he shouted. "Here!" the girl replied, choking. "I can't get out!" Anthony wedged his fingers in the gap and pulled hard until he opened a small crack. "Give me your hand!" he shouted. Clara extended her arm, trembling. He grabbed firmly and pulled, the hot metal scraping his skin. The girl slid out of the elevator, coughing and crying. The fire was beginning to spread across the ceiling. Anthony wrapped her in his own jacket. "Hold tight to me," he said, trying to breathe between the clouds of smoke. "We're getting out of here." They advanced through the emergency stairwell. The heat was unbearable, and the air heavy. The distant sound of structures cracking recalled the past, the same corridor, the same smoke, the same impossible choice. Helena had been trapped there. Clara stumbled. Anthony lifted her in his arms and continued. Each step seemed like the last. "I promised, Helena. I promised I'd take care of her." When the firefighters finally arrived, Anthony was already on the 9th floor, carrying an unconscious Clara. He handed her to a paramedic on the stairs and, exhausted, fell to his knees. The girl was placed on the stretcher, coughing and breathing with difficulty. "He saved my life," she murmured, before passing out. Anthony lost consciousness shortly after. The firefighters removed him from the building unconscious, his skin marked by smoke, and his face serene, as if resting after fulfilling an old promise. Hours later, at the hospital, doctors did what they could. Clara, covered by a blanket, waited outside the emergency room, her eyes red. One of the doctors came out with a heavy look. "He saved the girl, but he may not survive the night." Clara brought her hands to her face and began to cry. The sound of the sirens seemed never to stop, echoing inside her, mixed with the fear of losing the only true friend she'd ever had. And it was there, between life and death, that the truth finally began to find a voice.
The hospital was silent. The smell of disinfectant and the distant sound of monitors filled the air. Robert DeLauro walked through the corridors with slow steps, his suit wrinkled and his gaze lost. He had never seemed so human, nor so vulnerable. When he entered the room, he saw Anthony lying down, surrounded by wires and equipment. The old man breathed with difficulty, his face pale, his hands marked by burns. Beside the bed, on the table, was the brown-covered notebook, the same one Robert had tried to snatch from his daughter's hands. He opened it. Between the pages, he found a carefully folded letter, The yellowed paper bore Helena's delicate handwriting. Robert read in silence, "If something happens to me, it's because I tried to tell the truth. Anthony Reyes is innocent." She signed at the end with her name. Robert felt his chest tighten. Tears came without warning. He sat in the chair and held the hand of the man who had unjustly carried blame for 10 years. "I should have believed you. I lost her because of my pride." Anthony opened his eyes for a moment. His voice came out weak, almost a whisper. "It doesn't matter who was wrong. What matters is who decides to make it right." Those words hung in the air, simple and immense. The room door opened. Clara entered with swollen eyes. She ran to the bed and held his hand. "You taught me what love is," she said, "and it has no social class." Anthony tried to smile. The gesture was small, but full of peace. Days later, recovered, Anthony was discharged. Robert invited him to go up with him to the main auditorium of Delaro Industries. The place was full of employees, journalists, and cameras. Robert went up on stage with the notebook in his hands and looked at everyone. "For years," he began, "I believed a lie. I accused an innocent man and let his name be destroyed. Today, before all of you, I want to say Anthony Reyes cleaned more than our corridors. He cleaned our consciences." Applause echoed throughout the room. It wasn't protocol nor forced. It was sincere. Anthony, beside Clara, looked at the audience and then at the man who was finally stripping himself of pride. When the noise diminished, he approached the microphone. "What needs to be cleaned now," he said calmly, "isn't the floors, it's hearts." The silence that came after was the most powerful sound Delaro Industries had ever heard. And that's how, in that glass tower, a new story began to be written. Not about money, but about forgiveness.
Months passed. Delaro Industries seemed like a different company. Not because of new campaigns or numbers in reports, but because of something invisible, something human. Employees greeted each other in the corridors. There was laughter at coffee time. And in the main lobby, a new plaque gleamed under the natural light streaming through the glass windows. The Helena Foundation, in memory of the heart that taught us to listen. The project created by Robert and Clara funded scholarships for orphaned children and community education programs. The glass tower, once a symbol of power and distance, had become a beacon of generosity. Clara had grown. The arrogant gaze had given way to a gentle curiosity. She was still the billionaire's daughter, but now she walked through the corridors like someone who had learned to see. Every Sunday, she visited Anthony at a small community center on the city's outskirts. There, he taught young people to fix things: fans, lamps, old radios. But deep down, what he taught was patience. "Fix what you can and accept what you can't," he'd say with a smile. "The rest, time takes care of." One afternoon, the sun entered through the center's windows when Anthony handed Clara the old brown notebook. "It's blank now," he said. "And what do I do with it?" she asked, flipping through the clean pages. "Write what money can't buy," he replied. Clara held the notebook against her chest. "I promise I'll try," she said, smiling. At the bottom of the cover, she noticed one last phrase written in Anthony's firm handwriting. "Love teaches in silence." Clara looked at him and realized something she'd always known but never said. Anthony was more than the man who saved her life. He was the link between past and future. The man who had cleaned an entire family's heart. Months later, the Helena Foundation inaugurated a public garden behind Delaro Tower. In the center, a small bronze statue showed a girl holding a notebook in her hands and an older man in a simple uniform beside her. During the ceremony, Clara spoke at the microphone. Her voice, now firm, echoed to all present. "For a long time, I thought love was something you bought with gifts or power. But I learned that true love is what remains, even when no one is watching." People applauded. Anthony, seated in the first row, bowed his head with humility. Robert, beside him, clapped with tears in his eyes. When everything ended, Clara walked to Anthony and hugged him. "Thank you for teaching me," she whispered. He smiled. "Don't thank me. Just keep cleaning the world around you." The sun began to set over the tower. The golden light reflected in the windows, painting the sky orange. Clara opened the notebook and wrote the first sentence of the new story. "Some teach with power, others with silence, but only love truly teaches." She closed the notebook and looked at the horizon.
The gentle wind blew among the trees of the garden, carrying away the last shadows of a past that had finally found peace. And the narrator's voice closes the story. If you believe that love has no social class, share this story.